All right, buddy. Episode 9 of the Rehashables. Are you ready to go?
Fired up, ready to go. It's a weird, I feel like we always say this, but this was the weirdest month yet as far as what I've watched, and I'm so excited to talk to you about a few things in particular. So it's awesome.
Same here. I echo the weirdness. Right, last month, I should say, was a weird episode because we actually didn't watch that much either. We just did the Dune review, we did the Oscar preview, but we didn't really talk about that many things we watched. Here I am thinking that we're going to have a bunch more stuff to talk about today, but I'm in the middle of a bunch of shows, so maybe we can get into that at the end for like 2 seconds. But I'm waiting to finish shows generally before we bring them up in the podcast. So it's an interesting collection for me, interesting collection for you. Why don't you get started? Why don't you tell me are you still ranking your things like the best thing you watched, or are we just kind of the thing
I think this one's a little more free-flowing because of the content. So I'm just going to dive right in because, again, the whole goal of the Rehashables was talking about what we've watched over the last month. And I'm not going to lie to you. One of the best things I watched over the last month was WrestleMania on Sunday, Saturday and Sunday. And it was awesome, and I know you watched it, and we haven't talked about it yet, but that's what I wanted to kick this off with, because I've been so fired up about WrestleMania.
You're a freaking poser, though. That's the thing, because you didn't even watch it. Both nights, I'm freaking texting you, like, you need to be watching this right now, and it's freaking crickets, and then 5 in the morning, it's like, oh, I just watched the highlights on freaking YouTube, and that doesn't even count.
Okay, so I did not watch a lot of it live, 100%. All right.
You missed out not watching it live, because the conversation on Twitter and just the excitement of the moment was freaking awesome. It was awesome.
It was incredible. You know, it broke records for viewership. It broke records for attendance for people that went. And I don't care. I watched literally the next day on Peacock, which was awesome. Got a chance.
It's like, Matt, you should watch the Super Bowl right now. It's crazy. And then it's just like, oh, no response. Oh, in the morning, I watched the freaking highlights. Like, what?
Hey, listen, I watched the full Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes match the next day. I saw Logan Paul, the Women's Championship. I can't hang late. I'm up early. How can I tell you, you know?
It was awesome. I haven't watched wrestling in, I don't know, freaking 20 years. And I'll tell you what it was. I think the president of WWE was on Matt Bellamy's podcast the other day, and just listening to him talk about the business side of WWE and how that all works. And I kind of fed into some of the hype. And then I was reminded that if you have a Peacock subscription, all of the WWE pay-per-views are part of that. So I was like, I have a Peacock freaking subscription for who knows why, you know, because I have a million of subscriptions, but I have it. Might as well just freaking turn it on. It used to be a one-night event, and now it's a Saturday night thing and a Sunday night thing. It was awesome.
They did such an incredible job. Again, I've been loosely following wrestling, but growing up, you and me, I mean, wrestling was like number one in our house. We would watch every Raw when SmackDown came out, all the video games. Like, wrestling was awesome. And then obviously you get older and grow out of it and stuff.
Totally.
But WrestleMania always has kind of piqued interests. And then this year they brought The Rock back, or I want to talk about, who, I mean, the guy is, what he did and like how he made the heel turn. I know people listening to this, if they know anything about wrestling or The Rock, whatever, who cares? It's just you and
Everyone knows The Rock, but
everyone knows who The Rock is.
The concept of a heel turn might be able to connect some dots based on what you're going to say.
But they brought him in and back for WrestleMania and expecting to get this like huge excited response that The Rock is back, and the real diehard fans hated that he was back because he kind of comes and goes and didn't really fit the storyline, didn't want to take anything away from Cody Rhodes, who was kind of their guy. And on like the move, they pivoted, and The Rock ended up being probably playing one of the best bad guys. And his whole shtick about the final boss. First off,
final boss. Yep.
I'm gonna go around and call myself the final boss. It was such an awesome, hilarious nickname.
Is that new? Is that like this run of him being back over the past couple months as the final boss, or is this like
so.
Okay?
I've never heard him, and anytime he comes back, it always piques my interest a little bit. But the final boss thing, the Mama Rhodes thing with the belt, and like being an absolute terrible bad guy, it worked so well, and that's what got my interest in it. And then as you got closer to WrestleMania and you heard about some of the storylines, it was just so fascinating. And the main event was incredible.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a sec. So it was this guy, Roman Reigns, who I guess is related to The Rock.
They call it the bloodline. I don't know if he's like legit.
I think he's like they refer to him as his cousin, and obviously with wrestling, anything could be made up. Like I didn't think that there was a relationship there, but he's been the WWE champ for like 1,300 straight days.
Yeah,
which is
like 4.5 years. Yeah,
3-4 years. And I think Cody Rhodes and him have had a like rivalry for a decent amount of that, and he is Dusty Rhodes' son, who is Goldust.
No, it's Goldust is his brother. Dusty Rhodes is the American Dream. He's an older guy, big, blonde. That's his brother. That's
Goldust is Cody Rhodes' older brother or
older brother. No, that's his brother. And he's in AEW. And Dusty Rhodes is the American Dream, very flamboyant, very energetic, big guy, blonde hair, amazing mic skills. That's his dad. So I love that you called me a Fairweather fan or whatever.
I mean, I definitely watched it because I'm hardcore, but I also admitted that I hadn't watched it in 20 years. So I definitely don't know all the connections. But regardless, Cody Rhodes seems like a fan favorite. And it seems like he's gotten close, and then they just don't give it to him. Like Roman Reigns beat him last year, right?
Last year. So Cody Rhodes left WWE a few years ago to go to their competing wrestling league, AEW.
Yeah.
And when he went to AEW, that gave AEW a ton of credibility, and that was where he really blossomed to be a star. Yeah. Then he came back 2 years ago, won Royal Rumble. Everybody and their mother thought he was going to win at WrestleMania last year, and he did not win, which in retrospect was the best decision that they probably made.
Because they could milk this whole storyline for a year, and the main event match was freaking incredible. Yeah. I mean, it starts out like any match, and they're doing these moves, and it's fine. But once they start bringing in like surprise people, and they start moving outside of the ring, and there was a few people that kind of came in. A couple people that came to mind was John Cena, which was a surprise for me.
West Newbury, baby.
West Newbury's own.
Very specific. Very specific to West Newbury's pride, John Cena, yes.
So he showed up, which was a surprise for me, because I don't know the last time he was involved in wrestling.
But it's been a few years, but the best part was the whole thing with Cody Rhodes' storyline is Roman Reigns always wins, but he always has help, and there's always like people that come to his side, and that's what happened first, was this guy, Silo, or whoever came out. But then the thing is with wrestling, when the music hits, man, God, the eruption, when John Cena's music hits, his entrance song, and he came running down and was doing the F5 and just keep going because it only gets better.
Can I tell you something about John Cena and his music? John Cena is not a thing for me when it comes to wrestling. I think I was out of wrestling by the time John Cena became big. Like, I don't even know what his music is. Obviously, I heard it then, but like, I had no reaction to that. The all-time best music to show up in the middle of a match was Stone Cold's.
And we can get to that. That was the
well, actually, there's another good one. Yeah. So, but his was like, if you heard that music, it was like, oh no, he could be anywhere. And then you get Stone Cold Stunner out of no place.
Honestly, anytime I hear glass shatter just in my regular world, I'm just looking around, waiting for him to come out,
But so he came out, but then The Rock came out.
Which is, and another, like, they, like, just if you smell, like, what, the second that hits, it's like, God, this is awesome. And he walks out, and then he takes out Cena with the rock bottom in like seconds.
And Rock's in good shape, man. For a guy his age, like
51.
He's freaking pretty jacked. I mean, everyone knows he's jacked. He's posting stuff over Instagram all the time, him working out, and he's a beast, like kind of a freak. But he looks like he still belongs in the ring. And he wrestled the night before and was fine. So it was good to have him come out. But the best part of the whole thing was what happened next. Yeah. And that's when you heard Undertaker's music, and then it went black. Because Undertaker and The Rock had a big rivalry, if I remember correctly.
They had a rivalry, yep.
I might have even been out of wrestling for the main parts of that, maybe the beginning part of it. But anyways, music comes on, screen goes black, and then he's right there.
Yeah, and classic Undertaker stuff.
Yeah, and then he gave him a choke slam.
And then it went black again, and then when the lights came on, they were gone. It was just so like awesome theatrics. And
I would love to see a nighttime camera like showing them running off the stage as soon as the light goes black.
Yeah, like where did they go? Like, did they go? Like,
they went under the ring,
up the ramp, right?
No. Did you see the video? I saw something on Twitter of when Cody Rhodes went underneath to get something, pulled something out, and in that camera shot, there was someone that like backed out of the way. You can like, so it must have been Undertaker just hanging out there for like freaking 3 hours.
Yeah, like how does he get there? Does he dress up as like a crew member and then like goes down earlier and then like sneaks under the ring and just like chills out
Dude.
there for 40 minutes?
But like he's got to be mic'd up. They got to be like in freaking 5 seconds where we're cutting the lights and you better be ready to freaking sprint up there.
And I saw many people. I know NFL Network, like Kyle Brandt was there, and some people following on Twitter. Just the amount of production and like precision that has to go into this is so important, and they hit a home run.
They did.
And then The Rock, Undertaker does it. It's just an awesome moment. The only thing that could have made it better was if it was Stone Cold, but I understand Undertaker obviously is incredible too, and The Rock's look in his eyes when that happened, you could like see the fear, and it was just great. And then it was just Cody and Roman Reigns left, and it was an awesome ending to the.
And they tapped out a few times that I wouldn't have been surprised if either one of them didn't tap out. So I was kind of on my edge of the seat. Like if Cody Rhodes didn't win, it would have been ridiculous at that point, right? Like again, I don't know much of the history, but even what you said and my impression was this was his moment. So like you knew he was going to win. But I will say, those guys are good at wrestling. Like watching them wrestle, the precision with their moves. Like I mean, that was a 45-minute match, and every time I'm watching, I'm like, is it planned down to like this? Like some of the stuff they do, bouncing off ropes and catching, countering things. And I'm just like, how could you possibly be this good at wrestling?
There was a moment where Cody Rhodes jumped off the top rope and landed on Roman Reigns in midair, and he caught him. He caught him in midair and then gave him a power bomb. It's like, imagine if someone threw a 200 bag of cement at you. You would have to pick that up in like that. How do they do this?
So then I start watching it from the point of view of like, okay, was that a mess up? Was that a mess up? Did they, and they probably have things that they miss and they have contingency plans and stuff. But every complicated move that I saw them do seemed like they hit it. And I was just super impressed by the quality of wrestling. And if you put this match against a Hulk Hogan match from 30 years ago, it's freaking night and day what they're doing in the ring right now. Those guys are athletes. Obviously, the whole thing's fixed and it's more entertaining than sport, but guys are freaking ridiculous.
It's the level of quality is insane. Obviously, people you hear, I hate it. It's like wrestling's fake. Like, no kidding, wrestling's fake. Like, it's predetermined. We understand that. But if you don't appreciate the level of athleticism that these guys are doing and the storytelling, like this Cody Rhodes thing, the other reason why his dad never won the championship. Yeah. And he was always there and a big thing.
And so his mom was there.
His
brother. There were some kids in the ring. I mean, I assume some family was there. And then, it seemed like people were sincerely happy for him. And people kept picking him up and people were cheering. So that was kind of cool to see. Like, I was happy. I enjoyed it. I thought it was freaking awesome. And not that I'm ready to like watch Raw every week, but I did.
That's the hard part is like the commitment. It's Raw's 3 hours long on Monday, and then SmackDown's another 2 or 3 hours on Friday. Or it's like, that's what's amazing to me is like, it's like having the Super Bowl and then the next day, like the regular season starts all over again. Yeah. There's no breather.
That was always fun. I will say I don't know where to watch Raw, even if I wanted to watch Raw.
Number USA Network.
If it is, okay, great. I don't even know where USA is. I honestly don't even know if I have USA. I probably do. But so that's an interesting barrier for me. But the Peacock thing I think is good, man. As long as I have a Peacock thing, if I see something on Twitter like SummerSlam's on tonight, and I know that I don't have to pay $70 to go watch it, like maybe I do throw it on. Maybe I do watch more of those pay-per-view type big time once a month events.
Yeah, I know they are going to have a deal with Netflix. Netflix is going to be Raw. And they're talking about, I don't know if when Simmons talked about it, that they might be switching Raw to not Monday night anymore, and it'd be more like a Tuesday night thing. So it's not competing against football and all that kind of stuff. But
wouldn't be a bad idea. But if it's on Netflix, I might watch it. I'm probably more likely to watch it on Netflix than I am for USA.
They have the Tyson Jake Paul fight in July on Netflix. Mike Tyson and Jake Paul it's Netflix's first streaming live event, like a sporting event.
I'm all in. I can't wait to watch that.
Hey, yeah.
Can we talk about Paul real quick?
That was one of my comments.
You got me confused. Did Jake Paul wrestle or was Logan Paul wrestling?
Logan Paul is wrestling.
Okay.
Jake Paul
boxes Logan. I was impressed by him. I was impressed by that match. That guy's really good. He's a freaking athlete.
Insane. And since he kind of came in, he's always been good. But because he's a YouTube star, and honestly, so annoying. If you watch his videos, like back in the day, like can't stand this guy. As a wrestler, He was in there with Randy Orton, who's a legend.
He's freaking
19 years he's been doing this. Absolutely incredible. And then Kevin Owens was the other guy. But Logan Paul, I'm like, this guy is going to be the champion one day. He's got it all. Because he's got the act down. People don't like him, but he's so athletic. He did this move, you know what I'm talking about, off a top rope where he did a splash on Kevin Owens in the same motion, rolled forward, and then did another splash on Randy Orton, all in one simultaneous move. And this guy is the real deal.
I had the same thought watching that match as I mentioned with the other one, where like these guys don't mess up. The stuff that they do is insane. Like, how could him and Randy Orton coordinate some of the stuff that they did? Like, it still blows my mind. So, anyways, hands off to those guys. Like, they put on a hell of a show. Yeah, I really enjoyed watching.
The only other two notes I just wanted, three notes real quick. Just talk about the level of quality. I watched the women's championship one live, Bailey and Io Sky or whatever. Did you watch that one live?
No, because I think I was doing something, so I stepped away because it was the Logan Paul match, and then that one, and then the main event. I think I was doing something.
Women's wrestling is, I mean, you want to talk about where it came from, where we were to where it is now. Insane. The athletes, the moves, the story they do. I just was like, I was on the edge of my seat during that one, and I just think their quality of wrestling is so good and should be pointed out. It's not your divas anymore. It's like legit amazing athletes who are incredible at what they do.
Anything else you want to add about WWE?
Just their package, their video packages leading into the match, like the Cody Rhodes Roman Reigns package leading into the match, the history of it. No one does video packages like the WWE. It was so good.
I agree. The night before, when it was The Rock and Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes and who's it?
Seth Rollins.
Yeah. Dude, it was like 40 minutes of walking into the ring and video packages. And I was like, holy shit. But it was fun. It was fun to watch.
The entrances, Cody Rhodes' entrance, I have downloaded that song, and that is on my list now. And the Cody Rhodes' entrance I thought was so great. So
I'll change the podcast music for
to that. Yeah. All right, that's it. I know we went long on WrestleMania, but that was the big one. I've been dying to talk to you about it.
Love it, dude. So maybe next year you can stay up and watch the whole thing.
maybe I will.
All right, so where do I want to go? Jeez, I'm crow. So let's talk about something that I watched because I haven't watched that much stuff. I'm gonna go with a doc I was telling you about on the phone the other day, but I watched this 2-part Steve Martin doc on Apple, and I was really surprised by it. I actually I realized how little I knew of Steve Martin. I think of Steve Martin as an SNL guy that did a few movies and now has a hit show on his, I think, is it FX or Hulu?
Hulu,
Only Murders in the Building. But it was very interesting to hear his whole story. You probably haven't watched it yet.
I watched the whole thing. I finished it yesterday. Yeah. This was awesome. On my list.
Well, I'm glad you watched it. So do you feel that same way? Did you know all of his history, his stand-up history, his wackiness, the music, his whole routine before he transitioned to SNL and movies?
Some of it, not to the extent of I knew how crazy popular he was. I knew he was a clean comic. I knew he wasn't like a George Carlin, Richard Pryor kind of style, that it was kind of wacky. My first impressions of him were when he did King Tut on SNL or that kind of stuff, but did not realize I knew he was popular, but the level of fame that the documentary, especially in part 1, does with really showing how popular this guy was and just how his comedy was very feel good, not immature, but you know what I mean? It's just very simple, I guess, in a time where people, I guess, kind of really wanted that kind of comedy because he was selling out places that no one else was selling out at that time.
Totally. He was a big time act. One of the stories I thought was funny in the doc was how he'd sell out these places, and then the Playboy Club in San Francisco brought him up, and that was not his crowd. Those people were not there to see Steve Martin. They didn't appreciate his kind of comedy, but younger people would fill up these arenas or big theaters to see him, and all the shots were just full crowds. And he crushed. He was good at his act. To me, I did not think it was especially funny, anything that I watched, and that's not a knock against him. Maybe that's just, I've had a different brand of comedy growing up and in my life, but people freaking loved it.
What's so funny is there was this scene, it was 2 episodes, and they were both so different. The first one didn't see any interviews. You heard them, but you didn't see him at all. You didn't see him talking. You didn't see any of the people that were being interviewed talking. It was all clips and photos, and they did an amazing job telling the story, essentially up until 1980, where he stopped doing stand-up and hasn't done stand-up. And the second one was way more of a traditional documentary where it was him talking, them following him around,
interviews,
what he's doing now, and all that kind of stuff, and with other people too. But the most telling thing I thought the same thing watching it. I'm like, I didn't like laugh at any of his stand-up. It made me smile, and there were a few moments that made me chuckle. But when he put in the cassette tape to listen back to one of his stand-up acts, he couldn't even listen to it because he didn't even think it was funny or like it was cringeworthy to him. And I just thought that was so interesting because I have watched his specials on Netflix with Martin Short. I'm a huge Martin Short fan. He's incredible.
I regret not going to see them at Metal Auditorium in Portland. At the time they came, I told Tom, like, I want to go. We didn't go, and that was a big part of the second part of the doc is them doing their tour together, and those guys together are awesome.
And that is legit funny. Like, that is like, you'll like laugh.
I laughed at some of their back and forth in that second episode, in the present day stuff.
It's very different. So it was I thought it was really well done too on my list. He's an icon, I didn't know about his family, didn't know about his wife, it was cool.
Let's talk about that for a sec. I had no freaking clue about his wife. I had no clue about him having a kid. I thought the end of the documentary was going to be like, and he was just like a lonely guy his whole life. Because looking at that first half of the doc or the first episode of the doc, to me, he looked like a sad guy in a lot of the stuff. He was there and he was doing his routine, but like in a lot of the shots, and this is intentional, I'm sure, but he just looked like a sad, lonely, not that happy guy when he wasn't on stage. And he had some weird family stuff growing up. His parents were a certain kind of way, and I think that impacted him and probably why he did get married so late in life and have a kid so late in life. But I wouldn't have been surprised if he was single his whole life based on the first episode.
Well, even the way the start of the second episode happened when he was cooking alone, and you hear that one thing where he's like, I eat every meal out. Like, he doesn't cook. They definitely set it up where he wasn't married. At least that's what I thought. Yeah. And then you meet his wife, who younger than him. She's beautiful.
Pretty younger woman. I don't know how old she is, but I did read something afterwards. They got married in 2007, so they've been married for a pretty long time. Yeah,
and have a kid who's a young girl. You know what I mean?
12?
Is she 12? I don't even know.
I might have done the math on that. I might have read someplace what year she was born or something, but I think she's definitely not like an older kid. She's definitely like that age. So
I enjoyed both episodes, and they were so different. You know what I mean? I remember him from Father of the Bride and Cheaper.
You remember Wild and Crazy Guys?
Yeah, very much remember. I was like 1970, whatever, but I very much remember watching the SNL clips and again the King Tut thing on SNL and all that. So he's an icon.
Yeah, I was glad to watch it, and I thought it was well made. So it wasn't like bad quality doc. It was just like it was a well done doc.
Yeah,
probably like 3 hours when it's all said and done, an hour and a half per episode. It's definitely worth checking out if you're into Steve Martin, or if you're into comedy, or if you're into just people that are icons, like you said.
Absolutely. So that was on my list too. So glad you brought it up.
Okay, what else you got?
So I got third on my list. I actually ended up getting to watch American Fiction. So that was the last Academy Award nominated movie.
That's with Jeffrey Wright?
Jeffrey Wright, Cord Jefferson was the director. They ended up winning for Best Adapted Screenplay of the movie, and Sterling K. Brown was in it too. I thought it was 95% of the movie was amazing. The only knock is I don't think it stuck the landing at the end. But I still think it's definitely worth checking out. And do you know the concept behind it? Do you want me to give you?
Yeah, you told me about it. It was just like this guy wrote a book as a joke, and then it actually kind of blew up.
An acclaimed author, African American author, and basically the stuff that Black people are writing is just very stereotypical and a lot of white guilt of how they get famous. So one night when he's drunk, he starts writing a book as this over the top Black character that fits into all the Black stereotypes. And the book ends up getting picked up by a publisher for millions of dollars more than when his other books get sold. He ends up, making a movie deal out of this and all this kind of stuff. And it's just very hypocritical, but it's a really good movie and look at culture and stuff now. So
I'm cool. I'm glad you liked it. Do you think it got the proper recognition that it did in the Oscars just by the fact some of the nominations it had was enough?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pumped that Cord Jefferson won for that. I think he gave one of the more memorable speeches up there when he was not calling out studios, but suggesting to studios like, hey, instead of making a $200 million movie, why don't you make $10-20 million movies or $10 million movies? Because that's what this is. It's not a huge movie. It's a well acted, well written, simpler kind of story that was just really I enjoyed watching. So,
Well, I'm glad. So you got all the ones you wanted to see, though.
got all 10.
That's it. All right, good
Yep.
work.
Now we'll see what can compete with Dune 2 for the 2025 Oscars.
I love it. I love it.
So yeah, that's American Fiction.
All right, so you want to go to my next thing?
I do.
This is another weird one, but it is Iowa basketball. Iowa women's basketball. Is that on your like? Would you brought that up or no?
No, I'm glad you did though. I'm pumped you did because I'm ready to talk about this.
So I'm one of the millions and millions and millions of people that watched at least 3 games of Iowa women's basketball. I think I watched the Elite Eight, the Final Four, and then the championship game. But dude, that was fun. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how much of it you probably in bed, probably watched the highlights next morning. But I watched all those games from beginning to end. The first 2 games were with at least some of the girls were watching it. And I think the championship game on Sunday, Ellie went to one of her friends to watch the game. But it was an event to watch those games. They were prime time. It was good basketball. Caitlin Clark's freaking ridiculous. It was fun watching, dude.
It was so much fun watching, and I also did watch all 3 of those games.
Even the one that started at 9?
Even the 9:30 was tip-off for UConn or whatever. I almost dozed at halftime because the first half of that game was tough to watch.
Yeah.
And in the second half, things started blowing up and got very competitive. It was incredible. And what Caitlin Clark did this season with the amount of pressure that she had on her all year, little girls coming up, having a target on her back for all the money that she was making, and for her to be able to deliver what she did was awesome. And I don't know if they released the numbers yesterday. I'm sure you saw some on X or whatever, but that there was 18.9 million people that watched the women's basketball and 14 that watched the men's. First time in the history of the league.
Most watched basketball game in like freaking a long, long time.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I thought I heard it on a podcast even this morning that the viewership for that game was bigger than any basketball game in a long time. I don't want to throw a number out because I'd be off, but it's not like in the past year. We're talking like in years. Yeah, that was one of those. This run was one of those runs you'll remember watching. I watched this game here and I watched that game here, and I remember that Sunday afternoon watching the championship, and she was good. I was impressed by how fast paced the game was.
Yeah. Definitely.
Those girls they're good, and they've always been good probably, and I just have never watched it, but those girls move the ball up and down the court. They pass well, they shoot well, they finish around the hoop. Like, it's good basketball. So I really did enjoy that. And the thing I enjoyed too is as I watched more of it, I started to know some of the players, and I think that's always the key part to any sport. I think of Drive to Survive for F1. It's like, I like F1 because I watch Drive to Survive on Netflix and I know all the racers, and now I can watch that anytime and feel like I have connections to different people. And it's like, now I know some of these girls, and I saw what the projections were for when some of these girls would be drafted in the WNBA, and they showed like the first 7 girls or whatever. And it's like, I actually know that girl, that girl, that girl, that girl. I'm like, wow, I actually like might watch some of this if I have a chance to. And I thought that was real cool, so really impressed by the quality.
They did a great job with marketing it. The games were great. Even the South Carolina was really good. You could tell even when Iowa was up 10 or whatever, or 12 or even more than that to start the game, you could just tell that South Carolina was like looming. And
Caitlin Clark, 18 points in the first quarter. Yep. They had that big lead. They were throwing their knockout punches, and South Carolina withstood it. They're a better team, dude. They're bigger, and their rebounding was it's tough to compete with.
They were so fast too.
Yeah, they were so fast. They were good, man. There's a girl, I think her name is Cardoza. She's 6'7". It's freaking crazy, dude.
The rebounds she was getting, it was insane. But they did a great job, and I'm happy. Me having a daughter, you getting 3 nieces. You getting 3 girls. It's like it's great to see. It's great to see for women's sports. So what were the girls' reactions?
With Aubrey, we watched the first couple games, and she loved it. Basketball's not really her thing, but I think she can appreciate watching someone that's really good, and it seemed like it was really part of the conversation. So she was down. Ellie happened to be at a friend's house for the UConn game, and her mom was really into it, so they were watching it that Friday night. and they invited her back over on Sunday to watch a championship game, and that family was like really into it. So Ellie got into it. You know, I wouldn't say it's like the thing they were most into, but they were definitely caught up a little bit into the hype.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that they'll remember. Maybe basketball will be something they want to play more of. Maybe not. Maybe it'll just be one of those things where they just remember Caitlin Clark.
Well, and she's doing, you know, to women's basketball what Steph did to men's basketball, you know, 10 years ago, you know, 12, 13 years ago, where just the shots she was hitting was just insane. Like the three, when she was in the zone, it was insane. So, you know, it's fun to watch. And girls will be taking more shots like that too. So
one quality she has of her is that she talks like Tom Brady. You know, like she always says the right thing. Always the thing. If I'm her dad, I'm proud of her, the way she handles all these different questions and always says the right things. If you're a kid that's watching her, you're not hearing anything bad, or she's not making excuses. She's not attacking anyone. She's takes ownership. She always praises her teammates and coaches and opponents and stuff like that. It was great.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad that was one of the fours. What a sports weekend, huh? I couldn't name one men's college basketball player.
Dude, I didn't watch 1 second.
I could name like 4 or 5 women's college basketball players. You know what I mean? I had zero interest in the UConn game on Monday.
I think I'll watch next year because of Cooper Flagg. Like I will probably be into Duke, you know, but only because of him. I watched 0 men's college basketball, nothing of the championship, and I didn't play bracket. So I don't know. It's just not really a thing for me.
Yeah, it was great. And it was awesome what the South Carolina coach said about Caitlin Clark afterwards too. And they went undefeated. They're one of the best teams in the history of, you know, women's. That's they went 38-0 or whatever when it was said and done. That's wildly hard, obviously.
They're good. So, they were good. Congrats to them. It was a ton of fun to watch. So.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad you brought that one up. That's awesome.
What else you got?
I have my last thing, because I don't know, was WrestleMania one of yours or no?
Of course. Yeah.
Awesome. I wasn't sure. Okay. So the other thing is another doc I watched on HBO, and it's getting. I'm just looking on Rotten Tomatoes. That was 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 83% on audience score, and it's called The Truth versus Alex Jones. And I'm going to try to talk about it without getting fired up. But essentially, Alex Jones, that freaking guy who is in charge of InfoWars, basically started this campaign back in 2014 to start questioning if Sandy Hook shooting happened.
Yeah.
And these parents that went through the absolute worst experience that you can't even put into words to justify the pain that they felt for these 6 and 7-year-old kids that got murdered. And for him to basically tell millions of his fans that this didn't happen, and to question things and to make fun of, like, calling the parents actors. I mean, these parents were harassed. They still are harassed. There are still people in this documentary that genuinely believe that this does not happen. And there are people that go up to them, their parents, and call them actors. They say their kids are still alive. They say their kids never existed. And these are parents who had to bury their children. And this guy finally got brought to court for a civil case. And all in all, I don't care if I'm spoiling anything, it's in the news anyway, ended up having to pay $1.5 billion.
That get reduced?
As of the last thing, I haven't seen it, or at the end of the documentary.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of freaking money, dude.
And they had it up to March of this year. You know what I mean? He hasn't paid it, and that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But it just, like, it comes out just as that the truth freaking matters.
Totally.
And people have to be held accountable for saying these things. Just because you believe it doesn't mean it's factual. That is not the definition of truth. And the pain that he put these parents through, it's sickening. So I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know that I'll ever watch it, because it doesn't sound like, I mean, not that I only would watch free things that make me like happy or whatever, but like, it's just, I'm not a big Alex Jones guy. But I'm glad you listened. I'm glad you checked it out and shared that, though. I mean, it definitely like sounds like it's at least interesting if you're in for that true story.
It really is. Now, 90-minute doc, give some background on this guy, and reasons behind it, and you feel for the parents. So I just wanted to bring that one up as the last thing I watched.
Geez, yeah, now I'm feeling like $1 million. Holy smokes.
I know, right? We went from that, but yeah, it's a great doc, and I think people should check it out. So HBO.
Love it, dude. So, okay, the next one is more feel-good stuff for me. It's actually going to be a podcast that we have talked about. We're rehashing a podcast, the first podcast that we've ever talked about on Rehashables. And I actually thought, like, why not talk about a podcast if it really is that good or that interesting or that impactful, which I think to me this one was. And it's the one with Lex Friedman with Annie Jacobson, who wrote the book Nuclear War that I shared with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you might not have finished the podcast because
I did.
It's a little bit of a longer one. I think it's a 3-hour podcast, but she basically writes this book. It's a scenario of what would happen if a rogue nation, in this case North Korea, launched a nuclear war at the United States and everything that happens from that point on. And it paints a freaking really bleak picture of what that would look like. You know, some of the decisions that have to be made in the short term, what it looks like 90 minutes after that, what it looks like 2 years afterwards. And it's a very bad situation. It reminded me, none of us should want for even like 1 second for a nuclear bomb to ever be used ever again. And I think painting this picture of what it's like is a good reminder for people to be like, this is worst case scenario if even one of those things get launched. You know, because people might be like, oh yeah, you know, Putin might launch a tactical nuke. Everyone says it's not that big of a nuclear bomb in Ukraine and, you know, whatever. But like, dude, all of that stuff is worst case scenario. So
I talked to you about it. You sent to me and I asked you, I said, is this like kind of petrifying and scary? You're like, no, it's really factual ever. It was one of the scariest things I've ever freaking listened to. And I think that was so, I had a conversation with someone and they're like, oh, you know, it really like painted this bleak picture. I'm like, yeah, no shit, it did. Like, this is what the purpose of it was, to deteriorate. If you don't understand, if someone launches a nuclear weapon at us, the way it made it seem, we're sending one back, not for protection. We can't the chance of us being able to blow it out of the sky and the number, it's already over. If they sent a nuclear weapon at us, we're sending one back as retaliation and it's game over.
Yeah.
You know, it's literally that bleak.
And there's a million different ways that it could happen, right? But like in this scenario, it's North Korea launching it. And we have these satellites that as soon as one of these intercontinental missiles launches, they pick up the heat signature within like a second of it launching. They're always watching. They're ready for this to happen at any given time. So at that point, it takes 6 minutes for the president to decide what to do. And I mean, I'd like to think that I don't know what I do. I'm glad I'm not in that position, but like part of me is like, don't escalate it. But at the same time, like that's probably what the game plan says. And then at that point, you don't escalate it with just one nuclear missile in return. You shoot freaking like 100 of them. And then if you're going to North Korea, those missiles have to shoot over like Russia. And then, you know, and then next thing you know, the whole freaking place it's gone. Yeah.
It was petrifying. It was that 6 minute thing is like, we're going to probably talk about this for 6 minutes. Like the fact that that amount of time is the decision that you have to make, a potential world ending decision. It was really eye opening and I'm glad she wrote it. I got the book. I'm going to be listening to the book. And then the other big news that came out this week is our boy, Denis Villeneuve, is got the Legendary or whatever picked up the rights to the book and they want him to direct it. I think he's going to after Dune. So
it'd be a really fascinating movie, or it'd be a very, very fascinating movie. And I should say Annie Jacobson is not just some kook online that just has this theory. Like she's written a lot of books. She's well connected, has great resources throughout Department of Defense and ex-CIA, ex-military, and like the people that she's talking to paint this picture are people that have real information to share. So, and that comes across if you listen to the interview. So it was just from a couple weeks ago. It's definitely worth checking out. I will say, like, it was very scary. And I told you, man, like, you know, I wasn't scared. I was almost happy it was made because I do think people need to hear this. And this information does need to go out there because when you hear it the way she describes it, it's like, we'd be crazy to think anyone would ever launch a nuclear bomb. You know, it would just, like, how could it possibly happen? So in some weird way, I'm like, it's so ridiculous what would happen if that did launch that no one will ever do it. And maybe that's a silly way to think about it, but it only takes one. And then things get really weird.
All it takes is that one person, you know what I mean? One crazy person and then someone
back into a corner.
Yeah, exactly. And do that. So that's it really it was so, I'm so happy you sent that to me. And I know Lex Friedman, you know, he's obviously a very popular podcaster. You know, he has some really interesting people on, but that was That was one. It made me want to, like I joked with you, go get some Pedialyte at CVS and stock up on some water and some canned goods.
It's
That's
so
not gonna do
wild
anything.
because
Though.
like I have that same thought, except that stuff doesn't mean anything. You know, like it means nothing. It would take that missile freaking 20 minutes from North Korea to hit us. You know, we talk about 6 minutes to the side, but it's like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then it's gone. Like we're on the freaking upper East Coast. We're not in the middle of freaking South Dakota or something like that. Even that's where all the missile silos are. You're probably not even safe there, but like we're not in this like isolated place.
Yeah.
I would think that the Northeast would be one of those spots that would get freaking nuked if you were setting a bomb.
Hey, thank you for bringing that up. That was I know you posted it too yesterday, and that was where you, in a quick side note, told me about the speed at which you listen to podcasts, and I've now upped my game from 1 to 1.2, and so it's everything now 1.2. 1.4 though is insane. I don't know how the hell you do 1.4.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you. It's a personal preference thing for me, and I'm glad to see you're doing it at 1.2 only because you just listen to more podcasts that way. You get through these. It's hard to get through these 2-hour, 3-hour podcasts, and I feel like the only reason I'm able to do it is because I listen to them at a faster speed than 1. 1.2 is obviously better than that. 1.4 for me is that cutoff. I told you this on the phone where it still sounds normal to me, normal enough to me that I can listen to it. For whatever reason, 1.5 is. It's like a bridge too far. Like 1.5 I hear and it sounds like I'm listening like the Chipmunks do a podcast. But for whatever reason at 1.4, I will say like at the very beginning of the podcast, like the first couple seconds I listen to it, I'm like, wow, that sounds fast. But I don't know if I start getting into the zone and like my brain slows it down and it sounds perfectly normal. One thing that is weird too is when I hear beginning music, that'll pull me out of the fact that I'm listening to it fast. But yeah, dude, my mind has gotten comfortable with 1.4.
Great suggestion. So that's a good podcast. People should listen to it. But that concept is going to be around for a while now because now that the movie will be made and people are talking about it. So it was very, very well done.
Anything else? No, you don't have.
That's my 4.
I have one other thing I'm going to add real quick because you brought up Denis Villeneuve.
Yep.
I watched Arrival the other day because it was on Apple TV. You've seen this?
I've seen it multiple times. It's incredible. I don't know where it is in my pantheon, but insane movie.
Dude, I saw that movie at the movie theater, loved it at the time, before I really even knew who he was as a director. But like I kind of put it in the back of my mind. And with seeing Dune 2 again, and it's been showing up on again the bottom of my streaming services, I'm like, I'm gonna watch that movie. Dude, I freaking loved it. It was so good. It was a thought-provoking movie. It was a well-shot movie. If you have not seen Arrival, Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner,
Forrest Whitaker,
freaking watch that movie tonight. It's that good. And then let me know.
The ending from when she's running to try to talk to the Chinese president and like all that stuff is being intercut. And then the ending with the daughter with that song playing, which is the same song that they used in The Last of Us with Nick Offerman and White Lotus. That song with that scene is emotional. That is as emotional as it gets. Amy Adams does so good in that movie. God, it's a good one. I'll have to go watch that ending again.
Dude, it was so good. I'm glad I watched it. I mean, we're rehashing stuff that I saw years ago, but definitely add that to the list.
What a concept!
Based on a short story, and they made it into a movie. And dude, I've never seen anything like it in terms of like the concept of the aliens, like why they're there, the time stuff. Everything about it was a unique take on that story that we've seen a million different ways.
Yeah,
it was like a hopeful thing. There was one piece I actually have to go in a couple of minutes, but the whole reason that they were there was because they needed humanity's help in 3,000 years. I don't know if you remember that. But that was just like this tiny little line that was mentioned. Because besides that, the whole point of the 12 things was really try to bring people together, bring humanity together. But they were bringing them together because they needed their help in 3,000 years. And that's all they say about it. But it's a funny thing to make your mind go to, like, what could they possibly need their help for in 3 years, like 3,000 years? Like, what is that? You know, and it just kind of opens up a little bit of a can of worms. But I've never quite seen an alien movie that does it like that.
Incredible. I'm glad you brought it up. Just have to go through his filmography because there's some other ones that I haven't seen of his that I kind of want to see. So, starting with Dune 2, which is hitting digital platforms in 3 days.
That's awesome. It's awesome. I saw that too. Damn, I can't believe it's already April. So,
yeah, I know, right?
I think that's a good place to end it for us, though. I know we talked about maybe mentioning some things that we're watching. Let's just save them for next time. But I think that's a fun list. It went better than I thought it would be. I thought I was gonna be really dry. And then it was brought up some fun things, little different things when we're talking about WrestleMania, sports, podcast, mixed in with some other docs that we watched. I think it'll be more of a traditional movie, TV show kind of thing for me next time around.
Absolutely, but this was great. I'm happy, especially the wrestling stuff, because I've been dying to talk to you about that. So
yeah, we lost like 97% of our listeners right at that point, but it was all good. All good. So,
all right,
all right,
buddy. Thanks so much.
All right. See you.